The following story is just one example of the research and recovery going on at the Manitoba Institute of Child Health. It's also an example of the growing need for research and treatment of pediatric disease. Right now, the Be My Hero capital campaign is working to double its capacity for pediatric research and enhance its ability to field clinical research trials. That means more Manitoba-made solutions that impact our children here and all over the world. Everyday doctors and researchers right here in Winnipeg are easing suffering, saving lives, and searching for a cure. To the children they help, they are heroes. You can be a hero too. For more information, go to www.bemyhero.ca.
I have to go to the Y 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And from there I have to do a high intensity workout for half an hour. And then after that, I just keep going every week until study's done.
It's hard not to feel like a bit of a guinea pig when doctors have you spinning your wheels for research, but it comes with some benefits.
It's felt pretty good. I found that I have more energy, that it's easier to do certain activities that I wasn't really able to do before.
It was something that we could contribute to research for diabetes, and also it was a potential for Christian to have a free Y pass, which was actually awesome.
Diabetes runs in Christian's family, and while type 2 diabetes is the most common form of diabetes affecting kids these days, there's not a lot of information out there about it.
In the early 80s, I saw children with diabetes that didn't have classical type 1 diabetes. And being a very curious individual, I scratched my head and say, this is not type 1 diabetes. And how could an obese child from a northern remote community have what looks like type 2 diabetes that we see in adults age 60?
Dr. Heather Dean was actually the first doctor to diagnose type 2 diabetes. In the 1980s, she was seeing 1 or 2 kids a year, all from northern remote communities. Today, her clinic sees more than 40 a year. The why of it is in the science of endocrinology. It's about the origins of disease, and Dean worries about where it's headed.
As a young woman, you know that in you, if you are pregnant, you not only have your child who's going to be born, but that child, if it's a girl, ovaries of her children. So as a pregnant mom, you have 3 generations in front of you, yourself, your child, and their children.
30 years after Dean discovered the disease, there are more children with type 2 diabetes than type 1. Something is happening in the womb that's putting more and more kids at risk.
My biggest question is why and what are the mechanisms in utero that are causing these epigenetic changes to be able, that program the fetus to do these maladaptive changes later on. They may be adaptive changes that the fetus has to do while they're in utero because of that environment, but they are maladaptive when the child then is born into an environment that may or may not be a healthy one.
Once that child is born, the issues become even more complex. That's why diabetes research demands a diverse team.
And this chamber here, it pushes blood out to the rest of the body. You can see some beautiful valves here opening and closing.
This is where physiology comes into play.
How well is the heart pumping? How well are those tissues working? Are they affected by diabetes? And if they are, what are some of the factors that could potentially affect heart function?
Dr. McGavock needs Christian to get his heart rate up. The better it's pumping, the more he'll be able to exercise, and the better his blood vessels will function.
Every time Megan's heart beats, we're going to get a rush of blood through the vessels. So what I'm going to actually look at here is, what does that blood vessel look like? And we're going to, normally we would do it on a couple of sites.
Blood vessel function is key in McGavock's research, and he's exploring what that looks like in kids living with and at risk of developing type 2 diabetes.
If you have a new car, that car's not going to break down for a long time. And if you're a child, if you have new blood vessels, those blood vessels should be healthy. But we're not really sure what factors are affecting those blood vessels. We know in adults, diabetes has an impact. But on the positive side, we also know that the more you exercise, the better those blood vessels are going to be, and the longer you're going to be able to live. So in 5 years from now, what I hope we can discover, I want to pinpoint the dose, so the amount of exercise, the intensity of the exercise that a child needs to prevent diabetes from happening, and also pinpoint the type of exercise that's going to be best for a child living with diabetes.
Living with diabetes has many complications.
So we know that in adults, type 2 diabetes is a very common cause of end-stage kidney disease, so meaning requiring dialysis or transplant. About 30 to 40% of adults that have end-stage kidney disease have diabetes as the cause of that.
Dr. Dart is part of an eye care study involving 400 people with type 2 diabetes who were diagnosed as kids. Most of the study participants have only had the disease for about 20 years, and yet 50% are already on dialysis.
We know that these kids are generally obese, and that's something that is a little bit different than in the adult population because they're starting out obese at a younger age. So what effect does that have? And also we found that their kidney function is actually accelerated when they're young. So associated with that obesity, they have a very high rate of kidney function, or glomerular filtration rate it's called. And we're wondering if that extra pressure on the kidneys is causing some additional harm.
Type 2 diabetes looks different in kids than it does in adults. And so far, we don't exactly know how to control it or even stop it from some of its more devastating outcomes. We do know that diet and exercise are important, but changing those things can be tough.
Part of the process is being able to get through to these kids and to be able to work with them so that they understand really what's going on in their bodies and how important it is to start making some of these changes. Because if they don't, then when they're 35 years old, they're going to be on dialysis. And that's the real difference between these children and adults. When adults are 55, 60 plus when they're at that point, but these are young people at the height of their lives when they're wanting to have their own families and be working, and they have major health problems, and that's what we're really trying to prevent.
I see these children and it hurts me. It's very painful to see these children with very, very high blood sugars and know that their future is grim in terms of their health, their kidneys, their feet, their eyes. And to sit with some of the people that I saw 20 years ago who are on dialysis and having had amputations, it's very painful.
Diet and exercise isn't the whole answer, but it's a start. And it has kids like Christian seeking a healthier lifestyle.
Watch what I do, what I eat, make sure that I get proper activity, and make sure that I get out there.
There are a number of studies around diabetes happening at the Manitoba Institute of Child Health. They're all linked under a common theme of diagnosis, prevention, and management of this very complex disease. For Shaw TV, I'm Kim Kasher.